For horror stories that happened to nurses, once upon a time, in a small town near Chihuahua City, there was an old and eerie hospital where I worked as a nurse. The hospital was known for its dark history and supernatural occurrences. In this article, I will share for terrifying stories that happened to nurses in this hospital. Brace yourself for these spine-chilling tales. Story 1. The Haunted Third Floor. My name is Natalia, and I used to work the night shift at this government hospital. One night, while I was on duty, I heard a blood-curdling scream coming from one of the rooms at the end of the hallway. I rushed to investigate, but to my surprise, the two patients in the only occupied rooms were fast asleep. Confused, I checked the other rooms, but they were all empty. As I walked down the hallway, I heard the scream again, this time coming from room 23. I mustered up the courage to open the door, only to find an empty room. However, I could still hear the sound of a child crying. Frightened, I decided to wait for my colleague to return before investigating further. When my colleague came back, I shared the strange events with him. Intrigued, we decided to check room 23 together. As we approached the room, the sound of a child crying grew louder. My colleague signaled for me to be quiet as he slowly opened the door. To our astonishment, the crying stopped and the room was empty. We were both shaken by this eerie encounter and couldn't find any logical explanation for what we had experienced. Story 2. The Vengeful Nun. In the same hospital, there was a room on the second floor where a tragic incident had occurred. A patient, suffering from kidney failure, had taken her own life using a razor blade. After this incident, strange things started happening. One night, while I was in the hospital cafeteria alone, I saw a shadow passing by the window. I couldn't see the person clearly, but I could make out a white nurse's uniform. Curious, I went to investigate, but there was no one in the hallway. I later learned that other nurses had also seen a woman in a white uniform wandering the halls, especially near the room where the suicide had taken place. It was believed to be the spirit of the deceased patient seeking revenge. Story 3. The Mysterious Manja. In another wing of the hospital, there was a room that had been abandoned after a patient's tragic death. This room had become a storage area for cleaning supplies because no one could bear to stay there overnight. Many patients reported seeing an elderly woman peering into their rooms from the corner, only to disappear moments later. The patients were unaware of the room's dark history, but their encounters with the mysterious woman left them feeling unsettled. Story 4. The Cursed Window. In this hospital, there was a room on the second floor that had been sealed off due to the paranormal activity surrounding it. Patients who stayed in this room reported seeing an elderly woman walking the halls, crying and lamenting. The hospital staff tried to keep this information hidden from the patients, not wanting to frighten them further. However, the sightings continued, and the room eventually became a storage space for cleaning supplies. The curse of the elderly woman seemed to linger, and no one could escape her haunting presence. Conclusion. Story 5. The Cursed Nurses' Station. On the ground floor of the hospital, there was a nurses' station that had a dark reputation among the staff. It was said to be cursed by a nurse who had tragically died in that very spot. Nurses would often experience strange occurrences while working at the station, such as hearing whispers, seeing shadows, and feeling a chilling presence. One nurse, Maria, shared her encounter where she felt a cold hand touch her shoulder while she was documenting patient records. She turned around, expecting to see one of her colleagues, but there was no one there. Terrified, she quickly left the station and vowed to never work there again. The Cursed Nurses' Station remained a place of fear and unease for the nurses, who would do their best to avoid it whenever possible. Conclusion. These spine-chilling stories serve as a reminder of the supernatural horrors that can occur in the most unexpected places. Nurses who worked at this hospital had to face not only the challenges of their profession, but also the terrifying encounters with the paranormal. These stories act as a cautionary tale for those who dare to enter the realm of the unknown. Whether it be the haunted third floor, the vengeful nun, the mysterious manja, or the cursed window, the nurses' experiences left a lasting impact on their lives and serve as a reminder that sometimes reality can be more terrifying than any fictional horror story. Story 6. The Phantom Patient. In the basement of the hospital, there was an old, unused ward that was believed to be haunted. Nurses would often avoid going down there due to the eerie atmosphere and unexplainable incidents that occurred. One night, Nurse Sophia was tasked with retrieving some medical supplies from the basement. As she made her way through the dimly lit corridor, she heard the sound of footsteps behind her. Turning around, she saw a figure dressed in a patient's gown, shuffling towards her. The figure had a pale complexion and empty, lifeless eyes. Frozen in fear, Sophia dropped the supplies and ran back upstairs, never wanting to step foot in the basement again. The Phantom Patient became another haunting tale that nurses whispered to each other in hushed voices, a reminder of the supernatural underbelly of the hospital. These chilling stories, from the haunted third floor to the cursed nurses' station, emphasize the harrowing experiences faced by nurses in their line of work. The hospital's dark history and paranormal occurrences made it a daunting place to navigate, where nurses not only had to attend to their patients' physical ailments, but also confront the unknown forces that lurked within its walls. These tales continue to be passed down as cautionary tales, reminding nurses and others to stay vigilant and prepared for the unexpected when entering the realm of the supernatural. Story 7. The Ghostly Equipment. In the hospital's surgery department, there was a storage room filled with old and outdated medical equipment. Nurses would often report strange occurrences when entering this room, such as hearing whispers and feeling a cold draft even when the windows were closed. One nurse, Isabel, had a particularly eerie encounter in this room. As she was retrieving a surgical instrument, she caught a glimpse of a translucent figure standing in the corner. The figure appeared to be wearing a surgeon's gown and had a solemn expression on its face. Startled, Isabel dropped the instrument and quickly exited the room. From that day on, nurses would always enter the storage room in pairs, fearing the ghostly presence of the lingering surgeon. Story 8. The Phantom Call Button. In the intensive care unit of the hospital, there was a particular call button that nurses dreaded. It was known as the Phantom Call Button, as it would go off at random times, even when there were no patients in the room. Nurses would receive alerts on their monitor indicating that a patient had pressed the call button, only to find the room empty upon arrival. The eerie sound of the call button would echo through the quiet halls, sending shivers down the spines of those who heard it. One nurse, Anna, experienced the Phantom Call Button firsthand. Late one night, while she was on duty, the call button for room 17 started ringing. Anna hurriedly rushed to the room, expecting to find a patient in need of assistance. However, when she entered, she found the room empty, with the call button still illuminated. Confused and unnerved, Anna reported the incident to her supervisor, who confirmed that there were no patients assigned to room 17. Story 9. The Eerie Nurse's Notes. In the hospital's records room, there was a collection of old nurses' notes that held a chilling secret. Nurses who worked on the night shift often reported strange occurrences when reviewing these documents. Some claimed to hear faint whispers as they read through the notes, while others felt an eerie presence looming over their shoulder. The words on the pages seemed to take on a life of their own, with certain phrases repeating themselves or appearing in strange patterns. One nurse, Laura, even claimed to have seen the handwriting change before her eyes, as if the spirits of the nurses who had written the notes were trying to communicate from beyond the grave. The nurses' notes became an unsettling reminder of the hospital's dark past and the lingering spirits that continued to haunt its halls. Story 10. The Cursed Operating Room. Deep within the hospital, there was an operating room that had a macabre reputation among the staff. It was rumored to be cursed, with a dark history of surgeries gone wrong and mysterious deaths. Nurses who assisted in these procedures often spoke of an unsettling presence that permeated the room, a feeling of dread that hung heavy in the air. They would hear whispers in their ears, as if disembodied voices were trying to communicate with them. Shadows would dance along the walls, their movements unexplainable. One nurse, Gabriella, even claimed to have seen an apparition of a surgeon standing at the operating table, his hands covered in blood. The cursed operating room remained a haunting reminder of the dangers and mysteries that lurked within the hospital's walls. Story 11. The Spirit of the Maternity Ward. In the maternity ward of the hospital, there was a lingering presence that unnerved the nurses. Many of them reported hearing faint cries and laughter in the middle of the night, long after visiting hours had ended. One nurse, Sandra, had a chilling encounter with the spirit of a woman who had died during childbirth. Late one night, as Sandra was checking on a newborn baby, she saw a figure standing by the window, dressed in a white gown. The figure had a sad expression on her face and seemed to be caressing her own belly. Startled, Sandra called out to the figure, but it disappeared before her eyes. From that day on, the nurses in the maternity ward would always feel a sense of unease and sadness, as if they were being watched by the spirits of the mothers who had lost their lives during childbirth. Story 12. The Cursed Nursery. Adjacent to the maternity ward, there was a nursery where newborn babies would rest before being taken to their parents. However, this nursery had a dark secret. Nurses who worked there reported seeing strange phenomena, such as cribs rocking on their own and baby blankets being tugged by unseen hands. One nurse, Carmen, witnessed a terrifying sight when she entered the nursery late at night. All the cribs had been turned upside down, and the room was filled with an eerie silence. Alarmed, Carmen quickly left the nursery, sensing a malevolent presence lingering in the air. The cursed nursery became a place of dread for the nurses, who would avoid it at all costs and warn others about its haunting nature. Story 13. The Crying Portrait. On the main corridor of the hospital, there was a portrait of the hospital's founder, Dr. Hernandez. Legend had it that the portrait was cursed and would bring misfortune to anyone who looked into its eyes for too long. Nurses who walked past the portrait at night would often hear the sound of weeping, as if someone was in immense pain. One nurse, Patricia, had a chilling experience when she accidentally made eye contact with the portrait. She felt an overwhelming sense of sadness and despair wash over her, and the weeping became louder and more intense. Terrified, Patricia quickly turned away and ran down the corridor, vowing to never look at the portrait again. The crying portrait served as a constant reminder of the hospital's dark past and the suffering that had taken place within its walls. Story 14. The Mysterious Elevator. In the hospital, there was an old elevator that was notorious among the nurses for its strange behavior. It would randomly stop between floors, causing panic and confusion among those inside. One nurse, Anna, had a chilling experience late one night. As she stepped into the elevator, the doors closed, but instead of descending as expected, the elevator went up to the 5th floor. The doors opened to reveal a dark and desolate hallway with flickering lights. Anna quickly pressed the close button, but the doors remained open. She felt a cold breeze sweep through the elevator, accompanied by a whispering voice. Terrified, Anna frantically pressed the buttons to go back down, and the doors finally closed, returning her to the familiar surroundings of the hospital. The mysterious elevator became a source of fear and caution for the nurses, who would often opt for the stairs instead. Story 15. The Disappearing Patients. In the hospital's psychiatric ward, there were bizarre instances of patients mysteriously vanishing without a trace. Nurses who worked in this ward reported patients being present during one round of checks, only to be completely gone on the next. One nurse, Maria, had a disturbing encounter when she entered a patient's room to administer medication. As she approached the bed, she realized the patient was no longer there. Maria searched the entire ward but found no sign of the patient. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. The disappearance of patients in the psychiatric ward remained a haunting mystery, leaving the nurses on edge and questioning their own sanity. Story 16. The Ghostly Laughter. In the hospital's children's ward, there was a recurring phenomenon that both amazed and terrified the nurses. Late at night, when the ward was quiet and empty, soft laughter could be heard echoing through the corridors. The laughter had a playful and mischievous tone, as if the spirits of children were lingering in the ward. One nurse, Laura, had a hair-raising encounter when she went to investigate the source of the laughter. As she entered one of the rooms, she saw small shadowy figures darting around and giggling. Startled, Laura quickly left the room, realizing the laughter was not coming from any living child. The ghostly laughter in the children's ward served as a reminder of the innocence that once filled the space, now hauntingly preserved in the spiritual realm. Story 17, The Cursed Staircase. Within the hospital, there was a narrow and winding staircase that nurses dreaded ascending. It was believed to be cursed, with numerous accidents and unexplained injuries occurring on those stairs. Nurses who had to use the staircase reported feelings of unease and a sense of being watched. One nurse, Anna, had a terrifying experience while climbing the cursed staircase. As she reached the top, her foot slipped and she tumbled down several steps, narrowly avoiding serious injury. When she looked back up, she saw an eerie figure watching her from the top of the staircase, disappearing into thin air before her eyes. The cursed staircase became infamous among the nurses, who would go out of their way to avoid it, fearing the dark forces that seemed to linger there. Story 18, The Mysterious Shadow Figure. Story 18, The Mysterious Shadow Figure. In the dimly lit hallways of the hospital, nurses whispered about a mysterious shadow figure that had been seen lurking in the shadows. It was described as a tall, humanoid figure, completely devoid of any features or distinct form. Nurses would catch glimpses of it out of the corner of their eyes, only for it to disappear when they turned to get a better look. The shadow figure seemed to move with an uncanny speed, darting from one end of the hallway to the other, leaving nurses feeling unsettled and on edge. One nurse, Sophia, had a terrifying encounter with the shadow figure late one night. As she was making her rounds, she saw the figure standing at the end of the hallway, watching her intently. Frozen with fear, Sophia tried to call out for help, but no sound escaped her lips. The figure seemed to glide towards her, effortlessly moving closer with each passing second. Just as it was about to reach her, Sophia managed to break free from its paralyzing grip and ran towards the nearest nurse's station. When she looked back, the shadow figure had vanished, leaving Sophia questioning her own sanity. The presence of the mysterious shadow figure added another layer of fear to the already haunted hospital. Nurses would share their experiences in hushed voices, warning others to be on guard and avoid walking alone in the darkened corridors. Conclusion: these spine-chilling stories serve as a reminder of the supernatural horrors that can occur in unexpected places. Nurses faced not only the challenges of their profession, but also terrifying encounters with the paranormal. These cautionary tales warn of the unknown forces that lurk within the hospital's walls, from the haunted third floor to the cursed nurses' station. The nurses' experiences serve as a reminder that reality can be more terrifying than any fictional horror story.